Thank you for having me, love.
Oh yeah, it's the first time we recorded together, uh, we had a beautiful conversation, and some things went wrong with um, the final recording, so I couldn't put it out. But I know today that we'll have an even more beautiful conversation because every time I connect with you, it's a beautiful conversation and it's a beautiful connection. So it's been a while. I want to get caught up on all the amazing things you've been doing because since we last spoke, you were in India on stage speaking to a million. We're talking that's seven zeros, right? People, which
Yeah.
is, I mean, it's an incredible lifetime achievement. It's something that not many people could even conceive of doing. And I bring it up now because who you are as a person is so much about manifesting magic, manifesting your dream life, your dream situation. And I know you dreamed that up. I know that that was something that you saw yourself doing. And then here you are, you're doing it. And so that's just one of a gazillion examples of you showing up to life that way, you actually living and embracing life in this way. So let's start with how that all began for you. Like, how did you go from what you started at, little Sarah, to somebody who can manifest yourself speaking in front of a million people, who can get onto the list of the top 100 women uh, entrepreneurs and do all of the things that you've done? And it's not just, secret. I'll put this out to everybody. It's not a hustle and grind thing, right?
Mm.
There's a lot of people out there that do what you've done, but through tons of effort and so much blood, sweat, and tears, and that hustle and grind mentality. And that's just not you, and that's not the way, right? So tell us a little bit about how you got here.
Yeah, thank you so much, love. And I just want to encourage anybody that's watching this now, stay the whole way. This isn't a conversation about Sarah's life or Carissa. This is a conversation about tools and techniques and channeled wisdom and ancient secrets that can revolutionize your life. So if you listen now, you're going to get homework, you're going to walk away with aha moments. I guarantee you there'll be so many gifts and nuggets. I hope you stay through all the way. Some of the first things that I have done in order to get through what I've gotten through to where I am now, I've narrowed down basically the core of Sarah of what I teach and embody, and that's play through to your purpose will equal prosperity. And my childhood, my upbringing, my young teens, everything, drive-by shootings, ex-drug addict stripper, classified disabled, so many different like sexual assaults and things that I have gone through, um, like multiple times jumped by men. Like the old Sarah days were insane. And the only way that I could get from there to where I am right now was a quote that my dad would say, which I know is controversial to some people. But my dad's an old school Italian fighter. And, he raised me to like, this is the way life is. And he always would just say, fake it till you make it, Sarah. Fake it till you make it. And I remember being, in this life as a child, like, this sucks. This can't be. What do I want to be at? And grabbed an archetype. And, it was the truth to my being, but I couldn't see everything in my reality and my world said that this is going to be what it is. So I remember going to Dubai and God was talking to me on this experience and it's in the desert and I heard God say within every human is the untapped oil. And the humans when they look around all you see is desert. You could be in the most like nothingness part of your life, most extreme conditions. You would rather die than be alive. And all you have to do is have enough conviction and faith and you will discover the untapped oil that lives inside of you to build one of the wealthiest places in the world that's just like jaw dropping existence. And it's within such a short period of time. So I would say despite all of the fear, I've always moved into the direction of that fake it till you make it. So everything has been uncomfortable, but using the art of play and then holding the fearless faith and conviction and then letting God's will be done. So I'm a big God girl. I love how you even asked how this started. I was born on All Saints Day in St. Joseph in a saint hospital, given two names that mean of God and devoted to God. And my parents didn't slash don't believe in God. And my birth numbers are 1111, which is the story of Sarah in scripture. And again, my parents don't believe in God, or they didn't. So like they couldn't even have like made this all up. And I believe that I have been brought into this world. This is ordained. All of the difficulty, God was with me the whole way saying, I know this hurts, baby, but we're going to use it. You're going to stand on stage one day to a million people and you're going to share your story of this incredible life that you have now, building mini cities and getting the humanitarian award and on 9 board orphanages and like, this incredible epic life. And because you've gone through the difficulty, you can tell everybody that no matter where they go, they can come. But that relationship with God, holding that faith and holding that fake it till you make it, letting God's will be done, I think are the very specifics, some of those ingredients that it takes to lead a playful life along your purpose to create the manifestation of prosperity.
Mhm. I
Long
was on a
word.
podcast yesterday talking about purpose, and that was like the question that she had. It was a shorter podcast, and it was, talking about like, how do you feel when you are in your purpose? How do you know that you're living your purpose? And I had my answers. I'd love to hear yours as
Oh,
to how does it feel in the body? How does it show in the world? What does that look like in life to
mm.
be in purpose, on purpose, living your purpose?
There's a couple things here. And I love to, there's some tools and techniques that I give people when they're in question that we can go over. But the first thing, you've probably heard it before, is what do you have energy for when you have no energy left? And if you haven't sat in the seat yet of that, and if you're at the brand new of this, I want you to go back to when you were a child and start to think about the nutrients of your life where you lost time. Where did you find yourself lit up and with the loss of time? Where do you find yourself naturally going into a conversation for when you have the choice of a conversation? And then what do you find that when you study it, it retains in your memory more than other subjects? I also know, like when I know when someone's in their dharma and they're doing what they love to do, what they are meant to do in this world, by the way that their face and their body language changes, those are all signs that they're in the resonance of what I call the tone of truth. And the tone of truth is when you're in alignment with God's will. When you're in alignment with God's will, when you hit that tone of truth, you actually become in the embodiment of the perfectly poised peace. And from perfectly poised peace, I love getting emotional, your power comes. There's nothing more powerful than when you're in the state of peace. When you're not in your zone of genius, when you're not in your dharma, when you're not in alignment with your purpose, you'll get sick. So even if parts of you are in alignment with your purpose, let's say, Corissa, part of you is podcasting, and then 80% of you is hustling a job you don't like. You might discover that when you're out of alignment with your zone of genius, which is your dharma, your purpose, and why you're here, that you may start to get sick and you'll feel depression or you'll feel tired. Those are all signs that you're not in alignment, or you're in alignment but you're not delegating out the tasks that takes you out of your zone of genius. And I'm just going to take it a step further. So some people might be like, oh, that's great, Sarah, I know that I love being a conduit and a mentor. My land deals make me the most money, right? Like that's where my jam of my income comes in. And I love it. I love real estate. I love giving homes. So it's part of my dharma. I love it. And I love being a mentor. I
Mhm.
love teaching. When I teach, man, somebody called me 2 in the morning. I'm like, I got you. I should be sleeping, but I'll help you right now because that's my dharma. But what I'm not good at is what I don't enjoy. I could be good at. Like, that's kind of another thing we could be good at. Like, we're multi talented women, men, but I don't enjoy marketing. I don't enjoy logistics. I do these epic, big events, but my body shuts down and I start to get sick. So maybe that's you, but you're like, oh, I can't afford to pay for hiring. Well, then you co-collaborate with the most miracle dream team and you're willing to give away a larger share of your company or sales in order to build it. I think something that's a big talk that Emily Fitz and I discuss in our SOAR events is the lionesses. We women have been taught you had that women are competition, but if you're a woman listening right now, the lionesses run in a pack. They don't hunt alone. And so we've been programmed to believe that we have to pay for it or we have to do it ourselves or that people are going to take. No, there's so much abundance out there, man or female, to co collaborate a dream team so that you can get into your zone of genius. Like what?
Mhm.
And I have another thing that's coming through is some people believe that their zone of genius and their purpose is separate from the thing that makes them money. So let's say that Corissa, you're an incredible playful person, but when you sit in the chair of being an architect, you have to go into businesswoman. It doesn't mean that your architect is not for you because you're noticing that you're sick. You want to do it. It's just the way that you're doing it. You're not in the tone of truth. You're not in resonance of your playful self. So maybe you're supposed to be the architect that blows bubbles during meetings and has dance parties in between. And that's the way that you create. So there's some multifaceted approaches to making sure you're in alignment with your dharma, which I also think is multifaceted. I think we have many things that we do now as our multi-dimensional beings that we are.
Yeah, I just launched a new company about a month or so ago, and it's the first time, and I've had other companies, but this is the first time that I'm actually living into it through truth, through play, through God's guidance, like just letting things flow and be like, I've had all these glimmers of it over time, and certainly when I've had like my own single projects, I've been more in that zone. But when I've worked and collaborated with other people, it's always through like, oh, now I've got to get serious. I've got to like put on the blazer and like and just like be a really it's like a persona of what grew up in. I grew up in New England. I grew up in the 80s. Grew up with a woman boss is basically just a woman in a man's suit,
Mm,
and that's how business was done. And I had to deprogram myself from that to be able to say, oh no, I can create and build and bring in so much more beauty and so much more of what's meant to be and what I certainly am meant to bring in by that shedding that program and stepping into this truth. And it's not about like feminine or masculine per se. I think it just like you said, it is about the alignment, that alignment with your own truth and your soul self and why you're here,
mm,
and working life that way, working life from that program versus all the things that we get fed, right? So much of what is delivered to us as the way, this is what you should do. So, how did you go from shoulds and what you should be and do and how you should do it into your co-creative magical place? Like what were the leaps that happened there, and then what are the things that you rely on to
mm,
remain there?
mm. Okay, so I want to jump into something you mentioned, the feminine and the masculine. I know this is controversial, but I
Go.
very much dislike it. Every time I've ever heard someone talk about the feminine and the masculine approach, I get this like, not true, not true, not true. And I don't want to say I do have the gift of prophecy and of visions and God, I will relay revelations all the time. It happens, of course I'm wrong all the time, but I get something that's called like the tone of truth in my body, and it's a gift to have. Even human design and Gene Keys, they talk about me being like an antenna to God. And it's like this natural thing that I have that I can feel. And whenever I've heard somebody talk about the feminine masculine, like it's not true sensation in my body. Something's off here, something's off here. And for a while, I'm like, all right, I'm wrong. I got to be wrong. Like, I got to go with it. And I've now seen a couple other thought leaders and spiritual people who are saying, hey, this is off. And I'm like, yeah, I feel it. And what's happened is we've created a label that's created shame. I think, especially in women, we're being too masculine because we are in the enterprise of our own enterprises, or building our own empires. And there's a label that's put on to us, and I feel like it diminishes us. What I'd like to invite people to is structure is not masculine, it's structure. Women can have structure, men can have structure. And I think what the truth of what people are trying to get to when they explain the feminine and the masculine is the difference between flow and structure. But that's to say, oh, that's manly or womanly, is diminishing in our being. And even Earth, like I went out the one day a couple years ago, I did a live on this, and I was just feeling it. I was frustrated that there was this, placement on humans that just didn't feel true. And I went out and asked Earth, are you feminine or masculine? And I heard Earth say, I am neither. And to identify me as masculine or feminine is limiting the expansiveness, same thing with God, I believe, which is probably controversial, as to what I am. I think we humans have spectrums of energy. So just like you said, letting that go and allowing, when you talk about the should or shouldn'ts into our identity, let's go of the label. Let go, turn your TV off, first of all.
Mhm.
Turn it off. I would say go travel the world if you can. Like, talk about breaking out of your identity. I've been to almost 70 countries now, 30 countries in the last 2 years. I've gone many of them over and over. There's no real identity. Like, you can choose in 16 seconds who you want to be. And the shoulds that I was playing by was what was making me sick. The shoulds of what our school systems teach our kids and our environment tells us was the very thing that labeled me as disabled and uncurable. And I think a lot of us have the gift that if you are broken to despair by the world of shoulds, it's much easier to get to the F you. I'm going to jump to the whatever I need to do, which a quote I would say is, when the people pleaser in me dies, the God in me will arise. For anyone who's caring too much about what other people think, and also that's idolatry with God. When we care about what other people think versus what God thinks, then we're going to be on a never ending rat wheel that ends up sacrificing ourself and our truth. Authenticity is 40 times stronger of an emotion than any other emotion that's read in a room. That tone of truth, you being in alignment with, like, God, what do you want for me? That's the way that I've been able to build these mini cities now and have these investments around the world, is I cared more about what God thought than what other humans thought. And quite often that got me into a lot of human trouble. And for those of you that are like, okay, this is great, Sarah, but now I'm getting there. When you get to what we call the dark night or the dark angels or the moment of the soul rebirth, and you have the roof caving in and all of this stuff that's happening because you've chose to go with God's will versus human's will, that's when you say thank you. And when you say thank you in that moment, thank you for this blessing. I know the good is coming. I know the good is here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Literally, I mean, this is where I'm in private planes, hanging out with Deepak Chopra, meditating, Richard Branson's house, like living in castles, and like, oh, okay. I went from thinking I was going to have 7 Airbnbs to building mini cities literally through play. Because every moment of the difficult that came, I just went, thank you. And I went into my childlike wonder and I started praising the heavy off my body. That took me out of the should haves into that identity. But I'll say for any of you who are not into the, like, I'm not broken on the floor. All right. The trickiest of all of the identities is moving from your saboteur to your magician.
Mm.
A lot of people, like I had so much trauma that I was manifesting such traumatic events that it was almost like much easier for me to break these identities because they were so uncomfortable. But for some other people who this is comfortable for them, that's the tricky one. If
Mm.
you're feeling comfortable where you are, you have to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. You have to check yourself and do self inquiry about your saboteur because your saboteur is going to say 1 + 1 = 2. Now, in Sarah's world, 1 + 1 equals infinity. And when you start to break and bend the reality and utilize the laws that God gave you to co create and manifest your life, that's how you can turn the 1 + 1 = 11. So you watch out for how the saboteur might keep you comfortable in your life.
Hmm. Oh,
Mm.
I love the way you frame that because the saboteur is it's the trickster, right? Super tricky, keeping us in sedated, I would
Mhm.
say, but also safe. I mean, there's a reason that that saboteur arose in the first place. I think from that need for safety and security, probably at a time when you weren't physically safe or mentally or emotionally safe in your life. The saboteur could have been a friend at one time to keep us safe, like, oh, we're just going to, you know, I'm going to redirect you in this way because this is a safer option. But then when we begin to rely on that versus true safety, true
Mhm.
connection to the embrace of God and our own divinity, when you rely on those tricks to feel safe, then it's like, oh, now that's tricking you. Now it's sabotaging you, right? And preventing you, dampening you from living all the things that you're talking about. So thank you so much for framing it that way. The saboteur, how does that look, for somebody who is maybe wondering, oh, am I experiencing self-sabotage? Like, is the saboteur alive in my life? Like, what are the ways or some of the ways that that looks like in people's lives?
Do you have unmet fears? Or is there a box of unmet fears? Is the one thing I would question. Is there a box of the go bigger vision for your life? What would you do if you could do anything and you were easily able to go blah, 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 blah? Or you should be able to answer it immediately and either know that you're living in it or you're not living in it. And if you're not living in it, your saboteur is giving you all the reasons as to why you're not living in it. If you've had a goal and you're not meeting it within 90 days, whatever that manifestation is, one of your three brains, your brain, your heart, or your gut is off somewhere. There's still some internal work to be done. I would say if you're not sure if you're sitting in your saboteur, some of the other ways that it plays in our life is this like sensation of this isn't for me. I shouldn't do this. There's opportunities and it's not going to be good. And if I do it, it's going to be a waste. Those kind of things, opportunities are showing up and you're talking yourself out of it. When I went to speak to the million people in person live, oh my gosh, Carissa, like the level of saboteur that showed up. I mean, I was calling my prayer team. I'm like, I think I'm gonna get kidnapped. Like I've traveled all over the world. Like I was having so much resistance. So
Mm.
this whenever the greatness is gonna come, the equal to greater its resistance will show up in your life for a goal. So if you have a goal and then all of this resistance will come because you're just going to move through the static of the channel. I always tell everybody if you're on 101.5, but you want to get to 101.7 and you got to go through the static to get there, most people avoid the static
Mm.
or they think the static is a sign for them not to go. That's your saboteur is the static. It's the uncomfortable part. And for me to be able to get to where I was as a human, to standing on stage to almost 1 million people in person, it was so uncomfortable. And I was almost angry
Mm.
almost the entire experience. And I tried telling myself, oh, there would be way more opportunities to do this. And that's even true. But like my saboteur was like, you have other, and I was leaning into a lot of other intuitive guides and like, can you help me? And other people like, you may not need to go. And like, and there was this subtle little whisper in me that was like, you are getting on that plane and you got to do this work. And even after I did it, I felt anger. And this is a lot of us who are going to go towards our goal. You're going to have so much fear. You're going to have tons of reasons and tons of stories, and you might feel sadness and anger and resistance and pessimistic energy and all these things that come in. That's your old self dying. That's the old self, that the condition in our reptilian part of our brain that wants to keep us safe in the familiar old. So even after I did it. I mean, I did such a phenomenal job speaking that there were so many people that it came up afterwards, and in our group that said they wish they could talk like me. They could speak like me. It was that great. And I was like, I didn't do a good enough job. I felt angry. Like I was upset at the situation. And I watch it now and I was like, damn, Sarah, it was so good. It was really good. But that's how it was, just my old self dying. So when our saboteur is showing up in our life, like it's gonna, as a mom, I'm a single mom. I like to say sovereign because it's by choice and it's me and God. But I had so many good reasons as to why I shouldn't get childcare and leave my kids on Halloween. That's such a special day. I'm not married anymore, so I already lose half of those Halloween. So to give up that Halloween and travel on a plane 30 hours and a 3-hour car trip to the most awful air ever, and like, there's a lot of legit reasons not to do it. And that's what it is to climb Mount Everest, right? Like, you could die, and your saboteur is going to tell you, don't do this. But then you get to the top and it changes your life forever. So you check yourself if you have a lot of analytical reasons, but something about your intuition says yes.
Mhm. Yeah. And tuning into the gut brain, the heart brain, these other brains, not just relying, as you were saying, right, with the ego or the mind brain, which
Mhm.
most of us feel like, yeah, I think a lot of humanity, that's the only brain they ever use. They're not connected into the wisdom of the body, the wisdom of their deeper, higher, all of it selves, right? Of that connection. And
Mm.
so playing into, not allowing the logical, analytical, saboteur led thoughts to invade, and allow the bubbling up of what your gut and your heart were opening to and connecting to
Mm.
is takes practice, right? It takes doing it over and over. And so for someone listening who's like, well, I don't know if I can even, like, I can't even think of speaking to a million people, like, scares the shit out of me. But
Mm.
like, I can't even get up in front of, a meeting and speak in that meeting, right? So we're all facing this in some way.
Mhm.
Sarah's facing it at the level she's facing it at because she's gotten there. But we might be facing it, and I can't even stand up and speak to my partner and have a open and authentic conversation with them without getting scared. So no matter who we are or you are, we're all facing some level of, here, life is giving you this opportunity to step into, right, your authenticity. And that step could look a lot smaller than what we're talking about right now, but it's no less significant, right?
Mhm. Mm.
It's
There's
just like,
there's a quote to that, and it's, there's no difference between the king losing his crown and a little girl losing her doll.
mm, yeah,
So what you're saying is exactly on point.
yeah.
And
And it
it,
all begins somewhere, doesn't it? So I'm
mm,
sure you had all of those, we'll just call them smaller steps. They're not smaller in significance, but just we all have these it all starts somewhere, right?
mm,
And so for anyone listening, wherever you are, there is a next step. There is a smaller step that you will take into opening up into that truth, into that tone of truth. I love that phrase. And opening up more to the authentic self, and therefore opening up the heart, right? Really stepping into more of you as a loving being,
mm,
as a resonant with love being, like
mm,
being in love. And Let's talk about that, like what that feels like, but also some of those ways of getting there into
Mm.
that space.
So I call this God leaps. And one of my favorite superhuman gifts, if I could have it, would be to touch someone and they would know what I know about them,
Mm.
their truth, like what I see for them and their potential. Because God gives me the images for everybody. Like, look, oh, I see you. Don't you see you? And when we defy gravity, God gave us the gift to defy gravity. We are a child of God, and we are here to make manifest God's glory through human form. And when we understand the truth of this world, that we are to bring heaven on earth, we understand that we were here to defy gravity. We are here to make manifest whatever we desire through co creation. The difference between manifesting is a man, MAN, capital, I always say it, between that and co creation. Co creation is you and God, and God's will be done. I've always sat in the back seat and said, God, your will be done. And that's why I went from 7 Airbnbs to building many cities. You know, we have the Sanctuary Project, which is 104 acres outside of Austin, Texas, building the first ever eco luxury self sustaining mini city of its kind. I have another project that I'm landing the negotiation for, which is beachfront in the Bahamas to build an eco village. And then I have the potential of 50 acres in San Francisco to build Narnia. And I was homeless as a child. These are God leaps. 5 years ago, I had nothing. I was on food stamps on the floor wanting to commit suicide because I thought I was going to lose my children. And God said, trust me. Yesterday, I heard God say, so there's a word called amunah. Amunah is an original Hebrew translation. I highly encourage you guys, if you're going to study scripture in any way, study the original Hebrew translation. There's so much power in that living word when it hasn't been diluted or changed. The original, with all the missing scrolls. And Amunah is the protector of faith. It's the faith of all faiths. And my gift, so even the whole verse on the Hebrews 11 is all about faith. And that's where Sarah comes in. Faith is why she could have a child that birthed the lineage to Yeshua. So mine is here to help give people faith. But when you understand faith and that you can bend the laws of this reality, like our earthly reality tells us you must do A to B to C to D to get it. I would never have made it ever. I'm a high school dropout, college dropout, classified disabled, again, ex-drug, ex-stripper. I was never going to make it that way. And God took me and showed me, Sarah, you have laws, universal laws. There's 12 laws. And for any of you that find me on Instagram later, I'll share the 12 laws. I'll give you my book as a gift that we can utilize to have a God leap in our life. So some of our spiritual community call that a quantum leap. Well, often when we manifest with our own desire, we'll end up getting something we don't really want that's not our good for us. Like how many times have you manifested something that you thought you wanted and you're like, I don't really like this. So when you say, God, your will be done, and you go through co-creation, and co-creation, not only does it mean your will be done, God, so you hold that, but it also means that it's rooted in the energy of love, what you were talking about, peace, love. So you might have seen my interviews where I talk about the difference between a Maserati and a Maserati, right? That's manifestation versus co-creation. Are you going for a Maserati because you want to you get lit up driving it, or are you going because you want to please somebody else when you're going to get a high price tag on that, right? And so when we go with love rooted and peace, and then service, so you've got your points here. So you got love, maybe the Holy Trinity going, and then peace, purpose. You got love, peace, purpose, that dash of purpose, and then the intention going forth with God, your will be done. You have that perfect Trinity, and that's the God leap. So that's what's going to take you from homeless to building mini cities. And I want to encourage people who, you're like, Sarah, I can't even speak my own truth to my husband. Well, it doesn't, 16 seconds, I cured the incurable, literally. And it's not just me, Joe Dispenza within seconds is curing, incurable diseases through the power of the mind and meditation. And so you have to suspend your disbelief with me. You could hear me, but if you're not believing me, that's the faith. Faith is so important. That's the currency in which those 3 dots I just explained to you. The only way that those are going to work to create your creation with God is if you have the currency flowing them. Well, faith is the currency that flows that energy to the God leap. So you don't have faith and you're just doing the energy, then you are missing the points. It's in your doing, not in your being. And so many people are like, well, I'm doing, 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 doing. You know, I went blind this last year. For weeks, I lost taste, I lost smell, and God raptured me and took me into the darkness like a caterpillar into the nothingness where I thought I would never have my life back, and showed me that I was in my doing, not in my being. And God had been warning for me for a minute. And our land went from 11 million in value to 30 million in value in 2 weeks' time. For God to show me it's your being energy, it's not in your doing. And so much of us are caught up in the doing. And so if that woman who's sitting there saying, I can't even, express to my husband, how do I get there? Well, first of all, it's in your being, it's in your energy. Your energy is everything. It's the most important. And if you can have faith and just kind of keep setting your energy towards the future you, if you can add to that to build your faith, I always tell my girls to do this, build that muscle. I want to get them engaged. Take and create a miracle journal, I call it. So I'm all about these miracles. My book is called The Guidebook to Co-Creating Miracles. And you can do that through documenting. I have my book and I'm consistently writing in my books the miracles in which I've seen in my life. My son just won the championship. He's 6 years old and he beat the 8-year-olds. And their team, they lost the first time and they just won this. And I was crying. I was in prayer the whole time. He works so hard at it and his heart is so humble. He's not an ego boy, no, nor is the team. They're so humble, but convicted, and to see them win, like, that's a miracle. I want you to write it down and start to create it so you can train your brain. I want you to start searching the world about people that were like me, that went from classified disabled to building mini cities around the world and speaking on stage to a million and on the nine. Like, I had on the board of 9 nonprofits, but also helped to fund and run a school for impoverished children. Like, these are badass things from the girl who dropped out of school, right? So make the miracle journal, look for the world that tells you that this is possible. Get away from the community of people that tell you it's not possible. Your friends are your gravity, they're your gravitational pull, and they're signs that point you into the direction. So think of each one of your friends as they're literally holding a sign. Go this way, go this way, go this way. And they're influencing you consistently. Take time to meditate every single day with God. I say prayer, meditation, go into the energetics with God. God, what do I need to see? God, what do I need to hear? Go to the nothing, go to the peace, go to the co-creation, go visualize your life, like go to wishful meditations, stillness, silence, and solitude, keeping that journal, looking for it in the world, and then building rapport in yourself to trust yourself. If you are saying, oh, I'm not going to eat fried food today, and then you go eat fried food. I don't trust myself. If you're saying I'm going to go to bed by 10 o'clock and I go to bed by midnight, you're not loving yourself. That's not what someone would do that loved themselves. And self-love is really important in this journey, but then you also lose trust. So if you're wanting to get God leaps, you're going to have to build trust within yourself and go into prayer states and spend that time alone and look for it and journal. And I could say a lot more on it. But I want to add one tool for you guys, because we were talking about, how do you know things before and decisions, and I wrote this down. There's 3 steps on how to make a decision if you feel lost and you don't know how to make a decision. And in this, if you're, trying to decide what you should do, the first thing is you want to ask yourself, what would you regret more if you didn't do? A or B, right? Choice here, choice here. Which one would you regret more not taking? The second is, imagine that they're both great decisions. Not one's wrong or right. They're both great, but which one's going to be bigger and better for you in the long run and more expansive? And then the third one is you say, God, give me direct leads and guide me. Is this the step or the path that I'm supposed to be taking? And so that can help cultivate you in your path and your expansion.
Mm. A lot of people, when they're tuning into intuition or just trying to understand that there is more information here than just what our own single brain can come up with, and really connect into those whispers and those breadcrumbs of, oh, here God's putting something in front of you to either accept or not accept, and recognizing it as such. right? So a lot of it is that recognition that we are surrounded by miracles, we're surrounded by opportunity, we're surrounded by that, all of the ingredients for the magic, right? And then we get to take the ingredients and actually make it. But that's the key, right? The action is in within us. That
Mm,
we, in our recognition of those things, and then taking the ingredients and conjuring up and co-creating and actually taking the step to do that, that is the vital piece, that we're
mm,
not just these passive beings in this life to just get miracled on. Like we get to be involved, we get to make choices for that, we get to decide those things, and we get to also be the receptacle of miracles. But I believe that that's an important aspect of choosing the action and choosing the involvement, and being in the playful, joyful place of that as well. And I, like you were saying, it's like the choosing to move through the static, which can be really uncomfortable for a lot of
mm,
people. I certainly lived my, plenty of years where I numbed myself through the static. Like I was moving, but I was
mm,
numbing the hell out of myself during those moves because it was so uncomfortable. And then therefore not quite landing, not quite um, seeing all the gifts that had arrived because I was missing pieces through the numbing process, right? So that's the passivity of where,
mm,
yeah, we can move through life just being this passive object, or we can be here as you mentioned, this co-creative being, and that requires, and that is this beautiful responsibility of taking action. And
mm,
so I like to mention that because you explained it so beautifully. But some people, when they think of these words like manifestation, co-creation, they think, oh, they can just think something and it will arrive. But there's a lot of action that
mm,
goes on here. It's not just, oh, I can think something and then I can just go back to, numbing out and go back to avoidance and go back to distraction, turn the TV back on, right? It's like we don't just get to experience, miracles that way. There's choice in action taken,
mm,
right? So all of the things you mentioned are choices in action, right? Meditation, the journaling, beautiful ways of tapping into our inner wisdom and reflecting back what it is we hear and see and learn and know. When you get to a point where you now see, okay, I'm seeing miracles, I'm seeing these breadcrumbs, I've witnessed and noticed a few things.
mm,
What do you recommend people do to continue to get out of their own way? Because I think that ends up being like the biggest problem. It's
mm,
God's not the problem. Like all the ingredients here are not the problem. It's often just like the getting out of our own way and allowing and receiving can sometimes be the hardest thing. So what's your
mm.
advice to somebody who's just like, oh, they're like experiencing these miracles, experiencing this magic, and yet they still like are like plateauing in a place where it's not. I know earlier you mentioned that you were plateauing and you realized, okay, you're just doing and not in your being. Is there other advice that you give to someone who might be in that state?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I always come up we call it the upper limit problem too. Gay Hendricks wrote the book about the big leap and how we'll get to certain points and then we'll sabotage it, or we'll see the miracles and then we kind of fall off. Your why has to be really important. Your why has to be really important in your life. Like, what is your why under it? And I know a lot of people who are stuck in it should be this way, and I'm feeling icky, and I want my life this way, and I'm ungrateful. And my third mom is blind. She went blind in her late 30s, and God placed her in my life so that I would always be really grateful She's written 10 books blind, toured all over the world. And anytime I call her every week, I'm like, oh, yeah, I got a lot to be grateful for. And my why, making sure you're in alignment with that tone of truth for your purpose and you're living that out. Otherwise, you're not going to have the energy to keep going. If you're just working for someone else's mission or goal, that you're going to lose your zest. What you're talking about, it's called aligned action, the law of aligned action. I also refer to this as catching your gold. So we'll go to co-create and manifest, and then it comes, and we're like, oh, I can't do that. It's too much work. God will like, okay, here's the opportunity, build your city. I mean, sanctuary has been a massive death for many of us on the founders team, like incredibly difficult and very worth it. And you often will ask for the opportunity, and then the opportunity will come and we'll feel exhausted, we'll feel tired, we'll feel like we can't do it, or it's going to cost us too much money, or I don't have time for that, or I have to do this. Well, I want you to fast forward in this moment. When you hang up or when you stop listening to this call, when you fast forward to your deathbed, and just imagine that you're there and there's moments left of your breathing, and you're however old you are, 90, 100, 120, and you're looking out. Where are you? And what are the things that you wish you would have done more? And what are the things that you regret? And what are the things you're grateful for? And those are some ways to help keep you, check into that stillness and silence every day with God and your purpose, and really make sure you have that alone time so that God is your compass, your purpose is your compass, your higher self is your compass. I write every single night. I script my life out and I stay in a place of gratitude because I know we're co-creative beings. And when you lose gratitude and praise, you start to get into the ship that sinks you. Those are just really important parts if you're kind of losing your way to what you're speaking to.
Mhm. Mm. You are an incredible compass, an incredible antenna, an
Mm.
incredible light and being. Thank you so much for dropping all of this beautiful wisdom as you shared your story. I know that your story itself is inspiring, but it's also what you shared, the insights, and, really like acting as a mentor to listeners throughout this conversation to guide them in from wherever they might be to wherever they can go. And that's the message that I really received from you and heard through this, is that we all can go wherever we dream of going, and wherever we dream of wanting and desire, not being a horrible thing, right? Desire being what paves the way. And then allowing that play and that playful energy to be there, because so much shit's going to get thrown at you, right? So much is going to get tossed your way, both from within, saboteur, as you mentioned, and also, of course, from without. And I believe that the reflections of what gets thrown at you from without, of course, is our reflecting out, what is occurring within us in our own energetic fields. And so that's another way, right, that we get to live life, that we get to actually utilize the people and the circumstances around us as another compass or another set of filters to be like, ooh, oh, why is this relationship showing up, or why is this circumstance showing up in this way? There's something going on in here. And as you so wisely said, go and sit, go and be
Mm.
with God, go and be still and silent and receive the answer, right?
Mm.
It can
Mm.
be that simple.
It's literally that simple. So I've been practicing an ancient form of healing for 7 years with the master healers, Dr. Ram and Dr. Clint Rogers, and it's called Siddha Veda. It's more than 2,500 years old. And it's passed down master to student. And I've seen the blind cured, cancer cured, autism cured, people in wheelchairs walk. Like, I've been to pulse clinics around the world and have seen what can happen for people's lives. And according to our masters, 80% of all illness and disorder is emotional. It's trapped emotion in the body that has manifested to some sort of ailment and sickness. And they they're big things, and that's they're the ones who taught me the stillness, silence, and solitude. But they always say, keep your eye on what you desire, not what you don't want, but what do you want. And so getting clear, what do you want? What do you want? It's like less than 3% of the population even really has that idea. Getting clear, what do you want? And what's
Mhm.
aligned with purpose? And know that you get to shift and change that.
Yeah.
You get like we're not here to be in the same careers our parents were, and their parents.
Mhm.
We are now here to be. We're really realizing when Yeshua said, "You will do all I can and more." This is what he was talking about. We are God in human form. And, no, we're not God. We're not walking on the water. We are God, but we're not walking on water yet. So when we understand that there is, I don't want to say a higher power, but a powerful aspect of us that is beyond our comprehension that has created us into this reality. When you sink into your beloved, that is God. So the original Lord's Prayer is beloved.
Mm.
And even the word desire comes from your Father, which is beloved, your beloved. It's coming to and through you. And when you develop that relationship with your beloved, go on dates with your beloved, be with your beloved. No one's ever going to get you like God. And that relationship, that being, that energy, that play, that state of being, when I manifested all these things, I was having fun, but I took a lot of the aligned action. I did a lot of the internal work. I deny a lot of flesh desires. I don't watch TV. I walk every day and I meditate every day and I ice bath and I eat healthy and I don't listen to bad music. So the more you can check your energy and clear it and raise it and be in that state with God, the more that miracles are going to unfold in your life. And you're going to be finding me on Instagram, telling me all about it.
Yeah, yay. Well, I will put your Instagram link as well as a link to your free book that you're graciously gifting to people through Instagram. So go ahead and follow Sarah, connect with her energy. If even if you never meet her or work with her, we are energetic beings, right? So we connecting into the energy of Sarah, into the energy of her work and her dharma and what she's doing here. No matter whether you work directly with her, you're working with her, by choosing that. So I highly recommend choosing that, listeners. Go and connect with her, connect with what she's doing in the world. Any final words or thoughts on your heart that you want to share?
I'm just thank you, Corissa. You've taking your time out and creating a platform and a space for people to share these kind of messages is a gift. And it takes a lot of work and a lot of energy. And we never know as conduits and mentors how much it affects the world, but you're an incredible mom and you're an incredible wife and you're an incredible conduit and you've given such a beautiful space. So my last few seconds would be just to thank you for having this space being held and for helping so many people through it.
You're so
And
welcome.
anyone else listening, we love you.
We love you. Thank you, Sarah.
Mhm.
Mm.